All right, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Can you give me a thumbs up via the Teams functionality? Okay, thanks. All right, so let's wait for another minute for people to join the session because a lot of people are still, I see, joining it. Already 55 attendees. All right, let's get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome in this webinar. We're the 28th of June, 2023, and we will be talking about Microsoft Fabric in the coming 60 to 90 minutes. And I taglined this session, this webinar with Microsoft Fabric is your, or could be your one-stop shop for all your data analytics. Before we will deep dive into this session, we will first introduce ourselves. So nice to virtually meet you. So my name is Timothy van Brusselen. I'm partner analytics at element61. I have 16 years of experience in the field of business intelligence and data warehousing. I'm 11 years at element61. I'm enthusiastic about a lot of things in the field of BI and data warehousing, but I had to choose three. So I'm really fond of talking and learning about Azure data platforms. I think I started working with it 6 to 7 years ago. I saw the complete evolution from people hosting their on-premises data warehouses into the Azure cloud environments. I'm really fond of talking about data architectures as well, and how those data architectures can help you, our customers, our colleagues, convert data ideas, requirements, thoughts that they have into actionable insights. So that's me. I'm also going to let my colleagues Michiel and Gary introduce themselves. So floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Timothy. I'm Gary Goldman. I'm a principal architect at element61. I have roughly 10 years of experience, and I'm with element61 for roughly 5 years. I'm a big fan of data engineering in general, SQL-related informations, and I'm also leading the Power BI team within element61. What is yours?
Perfect. So, I'm Michiel. I have the same surname as Timothy, so and he's my brother. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, it's I'm already like 3 years at element61 now. I like to discover value. I like to discover like new tools, technology-wise, this kind of stuff. And my background is more Python, but I discovered at element61 also the beautiful side of SQL, and I like to combine the both worlds to good tooling and this kind of stuff.
Right. Thanks for the introduction. Let's deep dive into what we will be talking about today. And I imagine that a lot of people will have a big frown on their faces when they see a picture of the statue of Poseidon, and probably you might think, what is this guy talking about? Well, I'm going to take you back 2 weeks before the 23rd of May. So Microsoft, they planned a meeting into my agenda, but also into the agenda of a couple of colleagues, customers, and other companies, and they were going to announce something big. At that time, we weren't sure, or we didn't know what was going to be released, and they tagged, or they named the new thing that they were going to release Project Tridents, and that's why I added Poseidon with the Tridents. Fast forward to 2 weeks later, so on the 23rd of May, Gary and I, we were in Seattle. We were we were live at the presentation of Microsoft's Builds, which is a conference for developers, where they announced a lot of things. And one of the big things that they announced was that new data platform. And then at that point, it got a name, and that name was Microsoft Fabric. So in secret and all secrecy, Microsoft worked for 2 years on Microsoft Fabric. We didn't know anything about it. And actually, we were flabbergasted by the news that we got 2 weeks before the release, and even as the release itself in Seattle in the hours and days afterwards. We got a lot of information. We had a lot of good talks, and in this session we will discuss a lot of our learnings. We will also demo what we have learned during the workshops and the meetups that we had there. So to come with the first statements, Microsoft Fabric is not a rebranding of Azure Synapse. That was also something that came to my mind when I heard about the release. But actually, they didn't rebrand it. They didn't put another new layer on top of the already existing Azure data services. No, they built something completely new. They built it from scratch, from the grounds up. So I'm going to try to make my statement hard, and I'm going to discuss this according to some revolutions, 3 major revolutions, which I will be discussing to state that it's not just another semantic layer on top of Synapse or maybe other Azure data services that we have. The first statement that I will be making is that Microsoft Fabric, the first revolution, is that it is now it is a unified data platform. So it combines different data experience into one Power BI alike platform. It's not within the Power BI platform, but it's something that looks a lot like the Power BI platform. And actually, they're integrating 6 different data experiences in there. We have data science, Synapse Data Science, for all your data science and advanced analytics use cases. We have Synapse Data Warehouses or data warehousing, where you can build your warehouse using maybe already existing T-SQL skills that you have in-house. Then you have Synapse Data Engineering, where you can build a lakehouse, but then with different toolings like PySpark, Spark SQL, and there's Synapse Real-Time Analytics. And that's actually the new kids on the block. That's not something that we had before. So they really started from scratch. And Synapse Real-Time Analytics is some kind of streaming analytics platform experience that will give you that allows you to take actions on the insights that will be provided by the Microsoft Fabric platform. And those 4 are actually still under the Synapse umbrella, and the other 2, Data Factory and Power BI, are not. We still use Data Factory, but also there are some new nice added features to ingest data inside the platform. So it's not magically going to all be pushed into the Fabric environment. You still have to do some things to get it in there. And it's also the orchestrator for all your data warehouse flows. And then the last one, that's Power BI. A lot of people and a lot of you who are in this meeting probably know Power BI, have heard a lot in Power BI, and this is also now hosted into this Power BI-like platform. So we have these different data experience, and Microsoft identified different personas to start working with these experiences. And my colleague Gary will discuss them more into detail. But actually, you if you're a data engineer or data warehouse engineer, data lakehouse engineer, then you can do your thing with a new data experience that there are. And Microsoft here is talking about the true SaaSification of the Azure data platform. So maybe for the dinosaurs in this session, when I started 10 to 15 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, then we still had to set up data services, data warehouse services on different servers. So someone, system engineer, network engineer, had to set up one server or multiple servers, and then the BI or data warehouse engineer was going to set up. He was going to configure all these different services, and then we could start working. But we still had to set it up. If we go back 6-7 years ago, with the introduction of Microsoft, all these services were pushed into the Azure cloud environments. And back then, we had some services that we could choose from, and we could set up this complete data warehouse environment in some kind of serverless environment. So we didn't need it anymore a system engineer to set it up. It was just clicking a button, do some configurations, and the environment was there. The hardest part of setting up this environment is that you had all these different services, but which you had to connect to each other, right? So you had to be aware of networking. You had to be aware of secure communication to make it possible to make this services connect and communicate with each other. Now, when we're talking about the SaaSification, software as a service, then actually you don't have to push a button anymore. It's there. You just have to pay for a specific license capacity. You have to assign it to that workspace in Microsoft Fabric platform, and you can start working with it. And that's what Microsoft is calling a true no-knob setup, right? To give you some idea of what this looks like, I'm going to move to this slide. Then and maybe here as well, some customers or some people might recognize this. This is for us. This is our reference architecture that we have set up with a multitude of customers. And you can see that there are different gray boxes. There are a lot of components in there, and those had to be set up using the platform as a service solution. We had an acceleration kit to set this all up in a nice and convenient way, nicely secured, but someone still had to do it. And you can see that there are different boxes, and maybe if you can go over all these components and maybe start counting all the different portals that we had to work in, then we can see the difference when I will be showing the next slides where I will introduce Microsoft Fabric. All right, so for the ingestion, we had to work with Azure Data Factory, which has its own platform, right? The data was hosted inside a data lake. Again, another platform. So if you want to see what's in the data lake, then you have to open Azure Data Explorer or the Explorer functionality in the Azure portal, but another portal. If we're transforming, massaging the data into a data model, a data warehouse best practice data model, dimensional effects, again, a different portal. And we were using Databricks or Synapse Analytics to enforce our transformations into something that we could work with. Then there was Power BI. So Power BI datasets had to be created within Power BI Desktop, another one. Machine learning, another portal. And if you wanted to leverage the data which is inside the data sets, well, then you had to work with Power BI, which had to be created in desktop or in the web GUI. So I think all in all, we have 6 or 7 portals which we had to switch between to eventually create our data warehouse and create the insights into that data warehouse. Now, if we look at the Azure or the Microsoft Fabric portal, then you will see that there's one big gray box where we have the same experiences, where we have the same solutions, but they're all gathered or joined into one big Power BI-like platform. So we still have to ingest the data inside a data lake, alternative, because Microsoft introduced something different. This will be the second revolution, which I will be talking about. The revolution, and I will give something away. It will be one lake, and then you can choose whether you're going to transform your data with Synapse Data Warehouse, so the T-SQL tooling, or Synapse Data Engineering, where we're using Spark SQL and PySpark to do the massaging. We have Power BI datasets, which can now be authored and created within the Fabric portal. We have Synapse real-time analytics, again, in the portal, Synapse data science. And eventually, we're going to use Power BI dataset, Power BI reports, Excel, and a paginated report alternative within Fabric to give insights into our data, right? Okay, the second revolution. So Microsoft has built that new platform from the ground up, and it's built on one specific domain or component. So this component, OneLake, is infused throughout all the different services or experience that there are. And OneLake under the hood is actually an Azure Data Lake Gen 2 or ADLS Gen 2, but you cannot configure maybe yet. For example, backups, you cannot choose for a geo-replication, all these fancy stuff that you can do in the Azure portal is not yet there because, again, it's a true no-knob setup. But I think one of the things that show the bright vision of Microsoft is that they adopted an open source Delta file format. So something that we already have been using for years at element61, the Delta file format, where your data warehouse objects come together in what we call a data lakehouse, is now also introduced with Microsoft Fabric, and it's actually infused throughout all the different aspects of your data warehouse lifecycle. So if we compare this with what we're doing right now with data lakehouse, then the Delta file format stops actually at the goal there, the data warehouse fundament. But actually, Microsoft here went one step further, and they also introduced this one in Power BI. And this will make a huge difference for data friction and the way how we will be dealing with analytics and real-time analytics. Data is stored in one lake, so we're not talking about two lake or maybe a multi-lake. There's only one lake, so one Microsoft Fabric environment which will be used and which can be used and will be assigned to one tenant, right? Data frictionless platform is something that I already discussed. So Microsoft is really focusing here on moving the data as least or not too much. But there's also a possibility to use your already existing data lake, which might be hosted in Azure using Azure Data Lake Storage, or maybe it's hosted on AWS S3. So Amazon is also being one of the vendors where you can shortcut the data, and this all made possible because maybe there as well you are using a Delta file format, that open format, and you already built your existing data lakehouse, and that's why it's possible to shortcut that data lakehouse into eventual Power BI. One feature which I'm not that enthusiastic about is the OneLake File Explorer. So you also now get an interface within the Windows environment to see what's in the data lake, and it's roughly based on the capabilities that you have with OneDrive. So that's it for the adoption. On the other hand, there's also an adaption. So there, Microsoft adapted their performant and mature query engines that are used in Synapse and in Power BI to support the Delta Lake file formats. So in here as well, they built a new engine from the ground up, and actually they combined two major features. On the one hand, we have serverless technology, and on the other hand, we have dedicated pools technology. They created a new engine where it's possible to also, for example, create, update, and delete data on your Delta Lake. So that's one engine that they create. Another one is the new built engine for Power BI. We all love Power BI because it's that performance, because that's easy to work with. Well, they built a new engine to read data directly from the data lake. And this is called direct lake modes. Also, to give you some context there, right now there are, with Microsoft Fabric and direct lake modes, there are actually three ways of importing or querying the data. The first one and this one is not on the slide, is direct lake modes. With direct query, sorry. So with direct query, you can access the data which is hosting and which is being stored in the data hub of your choice. The biggest added value there is that you get the freshness of the data, because you don't have to crunch the data, you don't have to refresh the data sets. The biggest advantage is that in most cases it was not really that performant, because the crunching happens at the data hub side. So in an Azure SQL, I think the one that we use the most, and 95 to 99% of all cases, use import modes. And with import modes, Microsoft introduced a couple of years ago an intermediate layer where data is being compressed and being stored in such a way in a memory data store where it's really fast to get your insights and to do your analytics on top of that data. The biggest disadvantage of this import mode was that you had to refresh that Power BI data set, and how bigger the data sets, how longer it took to actually refresh the data. And both advantages are now coming together with direct lake data sets. So they adapted the proprietary IDF file format from Power BI datasets to Delta Lake. And now we don't need to have an intermediate layer anymore, because Power BI reports and your data warehouse, they speak the same language. So actually there's no need anymore to crunch the data anymore and into this intermediate layer with imports modes. And this is actually in favor of data lakehouse, the data lakehouse or data warehouse loading window, because you don't have to refresh that intermediate layer anymore. And again, there's less data friction. There's no extra copy anymore with the data, because with every copy, you actually introduce a new place, a new layer where something can go wrong, right? So that's it for me for the evolutions and the revolutions of Microsoft Fabric. Let's now take some time to deep dive into the matter with demos and things that Michiel and Gary prepared. And the first thing that we will demo is actually how can we build a data lakehouse in Microsoft Fabric. But before demoing, I think it's really important to introduce two new concepts, which are called personas and the data experiences within Microsoft Fabric. So I give the words to Gary to
All right.
to introduce these concepts.
Thanks, Timothy. All right. So indeed, as Timothy mentioned, we have a new concept in Microsoft Fabric, which is the concept of personas. And typically, in an organization, you have different profiles. You would have your Power BI people, you would have your data scientists, you have data engineers. Sometimes they overlap. And Microsoft has now designed the portal in a way that would be convenient for everyone to work together. So instead of talking a lot, I'm going to show you this on my screen straight from the portal itself. And you can see here that I'm on the Fabric portal, which is the same as the Power BI portal. And you can see that currently on the bottom left of my screen, I'm currently in the Power BI view, meaning that the information that I see on my screen right now is related to a Power BI persona. So relevant to me, new reports, things that have been accessed recently in terms of reports, etc. If I would swap toward the data engineering persona.
Let me intervene, because we have people saying that they don't see your screen.
They don't see my screen. Okay, interesting.
And share and reshare again.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Can you give a thumbs up or a signal that they can see that you can see the screen? Okay, you can continue.
Yeah. All right. So I'm starting over in the portal then. On the bottom left of my screen, you can see that I'm currently on the Power BI persona, meaning that I currently see information that are related to the Power BI people. So I will see my workspace, what has been recently being opened, things like that, reports, workspace, data sets, etc. If I'm now jumping towards the data engineering persona, you see that now on the top of my screen, I have lakehouse, notebooks, Spark definitions, things that are related towards my data engineering persona, right? Which not automatically are the same than a Power BI guy. And
okay, can we try again to reshare the screen?
It's again lost?
Yeah.
Interesting. Every time I swap or what's happening?
Okay, now it's for everyone. It's for everyone. Okay.
Okay. You see it?
I can see it.
Okay. All right. So as a data engineer, you can see now on the top of the screen, I see some lakehouse information, notebook, Spark definition, data pipelines, etc. And if I now jump into a data warehouse or data scientist, I'm going to open the data scientist. I now see the model information experimented for machine learning and things like that. Obviously, some of the components are also crossed. Typically, a notebook can be used by a data engineer and a data scientist. And so that's why you would see them. If I'm jumping into a workspace, and we have, for the demo, we have created a workspace which is behind a Fabric capacity. You see that you have some components, and depending on the persona I'm currently on, I will see in the new tab is going to propose me information that are related towards the persona I'm on. But this is not going to filter the page here. So if I'm jumping, for example, in my Power BI persona, I still see a lakehouse, right? So it's not going to filter. If you would like to filter to only see relevant things towards your persona, you can then here filter and do things like this, right? But this is more of a open for the persona and thing that you can create, not a logical filtering of your workspace itself. All right, with this concept introduced, I believe that Timothy or Michiel can take over and continue with the demo of the lakehouse.
Thank you, Gary. I think a lot of people are rejoining to see the screen. Can you share the PowerPoint again?
Yes, we will also maybe to counter the issues with the screen sharing thing. We will also give you the recording of the session so you can see it afterwards. All right. So PowerPoint is coming.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Gary, for explaining the different personas, and to maybe for some of you guys, the demo about the personas in Microsoft Fabric. Following the persona explanation, we're going to demo how to build a lakehouse. But what's the difference actually between a lakehouse and a warehouse? And when do you need to use a lakehouse and a warehouse? Like all good questions, an answer from consultants, it depends, and it depends from one scenario to another scenario. And I'm only going to explain the differences between a lakehouse and a warehouse, because you have all other concepts like data marts as well. But warehouse, lakehouse, it depends from your persona and also a little bit from your skill sets. Making a data warehouse is for people who are like with a lot of experience in T-SQL. They are T-SQL minded. They worked their whole life with SQL service, and also your public that is going to access your data, is going to adopt your data. These end users are SQL minded as well. Then you have the other side, a lakehouse. I'm more a lakehouse person, and it depends also for my skill set. So I know Python, I know SQL, and I have the tools to interact with my data using PySpark and using Spark SQL to make my models. Spark SQL to make my definitions of the data model, PySpark for using like transporting data between layers. Also, my end users can be both. They can be Python, but they can also be T-SQL minded. And I will explain you in the demo as well that we have some kind of SQL endpoint on top of our lakehouse to interact with our data in a SQL kind of way. And eventually, notebooks are your thing, but I will explain that as well. So what am I going to show in my demo? First of all, we're going to use a sample data set that's being hosted by Microsoft. At first, I'm going to create a lakehouse in my Fabric workspace. Then I'm going to create a data pipeline where I'm going to ingest that sample data into my file section of my lakehouse. Eventually, I'm going to create a Python notebook that will convert this data in my file section to an actual table, like a relational table in my lakehouse. We're going to explore a little bit with the OneLake file explorer how the data is being stored. It's a little bit a technical deep dive, but I will keep it very short. And at last, we're going to question our data using the SQL endpoints to get it out of my lakehouse. So, and now I'm going to try to.
Did you burn a candle for the demo, Go?
No. Like a little guys from Maria statue or whatever. No. So I'm going to live demo and hopefully sharing will work now. Perfect. Good. So thumbs up if you see my screen, but probably.
All right. Thanks.
Good. So what you're seeing here is my Fabric workspace. You can see that what Gary explained previously, that I'm in the data engineering section. It has no influence of what I'm seeing now, but it has influence to create new workloads in there. And you see like a lot of workloads in there that we can create, data pipelines, data flow, event streams, these kind of things. But what I'm really interested in is the lakehouse, my notebooks, and my data pipelines, as I explained in my outline. So you will see that I already created some workloads in there, just to don't mess with the demo gods. I'm going to just show you how you can create a new lakehouse. And the thing is, you fill in a name here, and it will pop up your different workloads in there. And it will create the lakehouse itself, the SQL endpoints, and the default data sets, which Gary will explain later and use it later. And that's it. You don't have to do any weird stuff in your Azure portal. It's all hosted within this workspace. If I open my lakehouse, voila, and it's loading it now, you will see that I already have some tables in there. I already have some files in there. But you have like a get data button where you can upload your files as well. You can make a new data pipeline with some kind of Azure Data Factory interface. You have some data flows. You can create a shortcut, making a shortcut to your possibly data lake that you already have. You can create a new Power BI dataset, open notebooks based on this lakehouse, etc.
All right, and the data is being stored, hosted on OneLake.
Yeah,
right?
indeed. Nice interaction. Voilà. So let's get back to our workspace. Oh, where is it? Voila. Now I'm going to insert new data in there. I'm going to ingest data into the OneLake, and I'm going to create like a new data pipeline. Voila. OneLake, and I'm going to make like version 2 because otherwise it will interfere with my naming. And it opens like the data factory kind of way on how you're ingesting the data into your lakehouse. What are you seeing here? You can see that, for example, you can validate your different things, but let's make a copy data pipeline, and it looks like the same as for the data factory. For your data factory stores. The thing is, there are no concepts anymore with linked services and datasets. It's all been handled within this copy data activity. It's called now like more Power BI connections instead of linked services. I already made 2 connections, but let's create a new one. And you have all kind of different possibilities of different sources that you can ingest into your lakehouse. I'm following the lakehouse tutorial from Microsoft. So if you want to reinvestigate or redo things, there is like a lot of learnings there as well for ingesting or the lakehouse tutorial introduction. So it's a small subset of this tutorial that I'm explaining right now. And as you can see, I have my account name with my sample data in there, and it's coming from a blob storage. And let's see what we can do with it. So, for example, I'm going to ingest it from my Azure Blob Storage, and it will give you the connection settings. For the sample data, I don't need to like authenticate to it. It's open source. I already made a connection, so he's popping up that I already made it. We put OK. And then the next step is that we can pick a folder. If it's not loading too long, I think the demo codes are fine. Good. So we can browse it. We can pick a container, a directory, a file name. You can explore it yourself. It's really easy to interact with it. We can choose file formats. It's the same functionality. Folders. We can put wildcard paths, list of files. It's like the same interaction as you have with Data Factory. Then for our destination, in general, it's now a lakehouse, so we can't determine other storage types in here. So it's lakehouse, the KQL database, or a data warehouse. You can select your lakehouse and define a table, or define if it's going directly to a table or if it's going directly to your file section in your lakehouse. But I'm not going to complete this totally. I'm going to take my other ingest pipeline to explain it a little bit more. It's all filled right now. So what do we have in our sample data sets? Let's see if I can find my activities back. So what are we going to ingest? It's coming from that wide world importers data sets, and we're going to insert like a fact, a sales fact, and later on we're going to insert like the dimension customer into our lakehouse, into our file section. I can run it, voila. And now it's going to run, and you can see your progress inside your monitoring tab. If it's stating somewhere here, voila, my monitoring hub, where you can see all the different things that are already ran previously. So this is like your monitoring section of all different resources that are, of all your different workloads that are in your Fabric workspace. It's like the monitoring hub look and feel of your data factory. So you can see the different notebooks that are already run, my data pipeline. You can check the run itself. It's the same experience. And it goes a little bit slower than normal. That's probably due to the demo gods.
I think a lot of people are watching your webinar now. So it has an impact on the internet.
A little bit sweating right now from the pressure. Voila. And as you can see, the first one, the fact sale, it's already succeeded, and the customer dimension, it's a little bit weird because there's a lot more information in the sales data than in my customer dimension, but okay. Good. So where is it being placed? I copied it to my file section. So the file section of your lakehouse, it's on your one lake, but it hasn't having like a relational structure in there. You you can compare it with really raw data that's inside of your one lake. And you can put everything in there, like Excel's binary files, JSONs, these kind of things. If you're going to explore it within the browser, within the UI, you will see at the dimension customer, you will see the fact sale. And let me go and explore it now with my file explorer. And you can download that file explorer, that's Fabric Lakehouse Explorer from the website. And then you will have like a nice interface inside of your, in your file explorer, where you can go into that workspace that I already have, like my Fabric webinar. We have my Lakehouse, and you will see the different files and the tables in there. And if I go to the files, and I go to my fact sale, voila, then you will see the different parquets that was in there, like in the block container, but it's not already yet in my relational table structure. And I need to have like a notebook for it, reading out the files and putting it away in my table. And that's when I use my Spark tools, my notebook. And let's go back to my workspace. And I have here already pre-created my Python notebook. And in this Python notebook, I will collapse like the little bit of technical stuff. But as you see here, I'm using like a dynamic notebook based on some metadata that I can use one notebook for all my different tables that are in my Lakehouse. So I'm really only capturing the logic inside the notebook. So I'm not making the notebook static. So in this case, I'm going to reload the table fact sale, getting it from my file section and putting it inside of my table. And let's see if we can execute it. There is some Spark session configuration, like that we have view order enabled. If you have more questions about it, please you can always reach out. And we can give additional info about it, but it's a little bit more technical. Then I'm going to declare my parameter name. And as you can see here, I made like 2 Python statements that is going to read out the parquet files that I ingested from my file section on the one lake, and that's here. And I'm going to overwrite my table, and I'm using like a delta structure. And that was the delta file format Timothy was talking about as a revolution in the beginning. And I'm going to execute it. And it's going to overwrite my delta table in there. And as you can see, it's launching some Spark jobs. It's in progress. And eventually, it will succeed, probably, but it will take some time. Hopefully. But it's like again sweating. Thank you. Good, but I'm not going to wait for it. I'm going to go back to my, and it's already there, like 44 million rows, almost there. I think it was about 50, if I'm not mistaken. So about 1 minute, 2 minutes, and he's writing like, I think more than like 100 million rows. Yeah. But okay, let's go back to the file explorer. I'm not going to go in the file section anymore, but I'm going to go in the table section because I read it from the files and put it away inside of my tables. And you will see here that in my fact sale folder now, I see that I have also parquet files, but it's in my delta file format structure. So you see all the parquets, but we also have like a delta log in there. It's not the first time that I truncate inserted this table. So you will see all the differences, all the transactions that we already did on this delta table. And let's go and pick one JSON in there. This is a little bit too technical, I think, but you will see that it's the same things that's happening in the Delta file format. It's an open source, so you can read it out with Databricks as well or with other tools. It's an open source file format with the only difference that the data is ordered, compressed in an optimal way to use with with Power BI datasets, which Gary is going to explore later. Good. So that's the loading of the data, and at last, a little brief sections. Ah, voilà. So it's exceeded now, like 100 million rows. Let's go back to my workspace, and now we're going to interact with the lakehouse using a SQL endpoints. Voila. So you don't need to configure it. If you make a table in there, it will be directly visible. And if you want to SQL it, it's nothing more than this. Right click on the table and you can select the top 100 rows of it. Voila. So it's as easy as this to create like a full setup of one or two tables till the Power BI dataset.
Yeah. I'm a fan, personally, I'm a fan of SQL Server Management Studio.
Yeah.
Are there also interfacing possibilities there, or?
Yeah, you can use the SQL endpoints to interface to the lakehouse as well. But there are some things that are not available, like views, I think, stored procedures. Then you need to have like a data warehouse endpoint there. So the lakehouse is really a little bit more compressed in functionality.
Okay, top.
Perfect. So that was the end
Right.
of the demo.
Good. So maybe I'm just sharing my slide deck. All right. So maybe as a recap of what Michiel builds and to transition to what Gary is going to show us in this next demo. So Michiel created a lakehouse, ingested data from the file section, so some sample data with Azure Data 5 data factory functionality. He landed it into the OneLake environments. He started doing some things with the data, explored the Delta files. He showed us what's underneath. He showed us the transaction logs, right? And eventually he used the SQL endpoint to query the data. I think
yes,
everything nicely comes together. It's within the fabric. All right, Gary.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so next step, hopefully you haven't used all the luck of the demo gods because I have to go. And that's on my side now. Before we get started with the demo on the Power BI, first, what has really been changing for the Power BI portal? You most likely have noticed that a lot of things have been changing if you're a Power BI user. The colors have been messed up and all of those things. It's because now it's not the Power BI portal anymore, it's the Fabric portal, right? And it means that for Microsoft, there's not a difference anymore. It's all within the same thing. And most likely in the coming future, you will be able to go to app.fabric.com and you will be able to reach exactly the same place as you can do now with app.powerbi.com. It's a unified security layer, meaning that the current security context that you have in Power BI, so viewer, contributor, member, etc., will also apply to the different workloads. So the lakehouse, the delta points, etc., will be using that same kind of security layer. You have different licenses. I will come back on the licenses a little bit later. And you also have Git integration in PBIP formats. So that's also a big change that came up recently, which allows you to do some pro development, if we can call it like this, where we can have Git integration. One of also the biggest changes that you can do with web authoring straight from the Fabric interface. It was in preview before, so it was kind of a glimpse of what was coming for Power BI. But now we can indeed do data sets straight from the portal, and we can do relationships, measures, hierarchy, etc. We obviously have the direct lake feature, which Timothy already introduced. And we also have the introduction of Dataflow Gen 2, which is a low-code ETL, similar to the Gen 1, but now you can also do extra ETL communication there, where you can really write straight to delta type tables. All right, so before I get to the next, I'm gonna do my demo. Hopefully the sharing works in this case. Let me know in the chat if it does. You guys see my screen for now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. All right, so let's start exactly where Michiel left, and we're gonna go to our lakehouse, where we now have two tables. We have the dim customer and the dim and the fact sales, and at this point we would like to create a new Power BI dataset. So I'm going to create a new Power BI dataset by conveniently clicking on the button New Power BI dataset, and I can select the two tables I want to use. I'm going to confirm, and this is going to create automatically out of the box a dataset behind the scene in my workspace, and automatically put all the tables in there. So at this point, I'm connected to a direct lake, and this is live data. So I'm not importing anything, I'm not refreshing anything. I can simply straight connect to it. On the top here, you can see the name. Personally, I like to call my datasets DS, so I'm going to call it DS sales because it says related, and this is direct lake, so this. And we now have our beautiful dataset names, and you can see our two tables. Here, you are probably familiar with this interface if you're doing a little bit of Power BI, but we can start joining our tables. For example, the customer key to the customer key. It's a many-to-one, correct? I'm going from the fact to the table. I'm confirming this, and then voila, I have my relationship available. So now I can also hide some keys here up because they are not relevant, and also from my fact table, most likely a lot of those keys are not relevant, so I'm going to hide all of this. Now, obviously, you also want to have some measures because you want to do some reporting. So I'm going to create a new measure over the profit. I'm going to call this the total profit equals the sum of the profits. Voila, I'm showcasing my DAX skills at the same time. And here I'm going to create a new measure also from the button on the top, showing you that it's doing the same thing. Total quantity equals the sum of the quantity. Voila. Now we have a beautiful data set that has a relationship and that has some measures. I could also create a hierarchy, etc., but you cannot for now create calculated columns and things like that, right? So a little bit limited still. Now this is now done, and the next step is to create a report. I could go from Power BI desktop and create a report based on that one, but I can also do it straight from the interface. So I'm going to click on the new report button. Automatically, it's going to generate a report straight connected towards my data. This is again direct link. I'm not loading anything, and you can see here I'm going to connect to the data, and here up I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a table out of it, and I'm going to jump with my customer up, customers, boom, and I'm going to use also customer as a filter, for example. And you can see, oops, voila, that if I'm putting some customer in there, you can see that it's behaving as import mode would do. So it's very performant. Really, you don't see difference with import. And to show you that we are not tricking you, let's take a controls of the data. How many records do we have in here? Count. We have, well, we don't have the 50 million as before. I guess it's truncated since then. But well, we certainly have some data in there, so it's not like it's an empty table. Okay.
And we're reading the data from
Delta. Indeed, at this point, this is pure delta, right? So it's not a SQL table behind the scene or nothing like that. So this is pure delta file behind the scene. Okay, super nice. So this is my sales report direct lake, and I'm saving this inside of the workspace. And to show you that it's also possible to still do the import mode, I'm going to go over back to my workspace, and I'm going to use the SQL endpoint that Michiel has already showed you. So here in the option, there is an option to copy the SQL connection string, which is very convenient for me, because then I can copy this, go back to my Power BI desktop, do a get data SQL server, and then I can simply paste this in here. I'm going to do an import mode here, going to press OK, and it's going to connect me to the SQL endpoint and allow me to select the tables. So for the sake of the demo, I'm just going to take the customer table, because otherwise it might be a little bit too slow to load everything. So just take one table. Voila. There's only a few hundred records in there, I believe. Voila, 400 records. I'm saving this as a dataset ds underscore sales underscore import, for example. And now I can publish this. publishing this to the webinar workspace. Obviously, it can be in any workspace. Here, for the sake of being convenient, I'm publishing it to the same one, but you can publish it to anything at this point. You just require a pro license. So now if I'm refreshing here, I should see, I don't even have to refresh, my dataset import is here. And if I'm now opening this one and I create a report from scratch, I can take my table customer and voila, do a simple report on the customer. And I'm saving this as sales import. And you can see that this is exactly like you were doing before. So to summarize, we managed to create a report on the dataset via direct lake. We also managed to create a report based on the import. You see that everything is still available, and all of this is straight within the interface. I didn't even need to connect to Power BI Desktop to create my authoring, my web authoring. All right. Good. I think we can go back to the presentation. So I should stop sharing. If you can reshare the slides, please, yes. Timothy.
There are a lot of good questions popping up, and we will answer them at the end of the session. We'll try to answer them.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So to continue on the Power BI topic, so how do we unlock the value of Microsoft Fabric? Well, you have multiple licenses, and the biggest change I would say with Power BI is that we are now in a pay-as-you-go model, right? Since, as Timothy has explained, we are going for a full SaaS mode of Fabric. They use the pay-as-you-go, which is kind of similar to any SaaS things on the Azure portal. Meaning that it's provisioned through the Azure portal and not the Office portal anymore. So that's a difference. You can scale up and scale down and start and pause. That's important because the premium capacity that you would provision through the Office, you cannot really pause it, right? You have your capacity, it's up and running. In this case, you have what we call SKUs that go from F2 to F2048. You can really go high. And depending on which SKU you decide to have, you will have different performance, right? You can see here that the equivalent of a P1 capacity is F64. So the big advantage of being able to pause and scale up and scale down is that you can obviously have some very beefy ETL. For example, in the morning, you would scale up to F32, F64, and then when this is over, you can scale down or even pause your capacity, right? As of today, reservations are not released yet, so you will have to pay for the price that you see on the website. If you want to have a cheaper reservation, that will come later down the year, but they haven't announced it yet officially. So in terms of licensing and the different things that you will have, if you currently have a Power BI premium per capacity, you will have the compatibility with the features, but you cannot pause your capacity. Obviously, like if you have a P1, you cannot pause your P1, that will not change. But as I said, you are able to use the lakehouse features and the data warehousing features, etc. Right? So you're not stuck out of the fabric by using your P1 capacity. If you don't want this to happen, be aware that you need to go into admin portal and disable this. Otherwise, people will start seeing those components available, those workloads available. Now, for the fabric capacity, the equivalent of a P1 is the F64, meaning that if you ever want to use Power BI premium features, such as unlimited distribution, if you're aware in a P1 capacity or above, you only pay for the pro licenses and the free licenses are free. If you want to reuse that feature from Power BI, you need to be at least at F64. If you scale down or you pause your capacity, you will restrict your available features. So be aware that you're not going to go for F64 and then have unlimited capacity, and then suddenly you go F32, it will not work, right? So be aware of that if you're playing with your scale up and scale down, you will have limited features. For the Power BI Pro and Premium, you do not have any access to the Fabric features, so you won't have access to any, but you still have access to the Git workspace if you're in PPU. If you're just a Pro user, you will not have access to the workspace. For the rest, everything works exactly like it was before. Now, here is a little decision tree that we sometimes use with our customers, and it helps you to decide which license you should go for. So in this case, the first question that we ask you is, are you currently in Power BI Pro / PPU, or when you're already in Premium? If you're in Pro and you're never going to use any Fabric features, just don't do anything. You keep your license and you keep like this. If you want to do some Fabric playground or whatever, then I would consider provisioning a small capacity test and evaluate. If you're currently in a Premium per capacity, I would ask myself the question, can I pause my capacity? If I can pause my capacity, then you might end up in a scenario where, for example, you're running only 8 hours a day. Then it might be cheaper for you to go for a Fabric capacity because you can pause it, scale it up and scale it down. And then you can probably save up some costs. Then I would say provision a playground and do some estimation on the cost. If pausing your capacity is not an option for you because you have a global company, you have people in America, in Asia, whatever, and the full capacity needs to be up and running all the time, I would say stay in the P1 or in P2 and P3, whatever you have, and stay within that capacity and play with the features that are available to you. All right, I think that covers everything that I wanted to cover. We're going to jump over the FAQ, and Timothy, you're kickstarting this one.
All right, yeah, thanks for sharing your experiences with Power BI and with the data warehouse, or how to build a data lakehouse now with the new Fabric experiences. All right, I'm going to take control of the screen. Voila. So before jumping into the questions that we already had, and there actually was also an answer from one of the people in the audience, I'm going to focus a little bit on the questions that we already had gotten from colleagues, from customers, from people where we were discussing Fabric. So the first one is one that I'm going to answer. So imagine that you already have built a data warehouse, a data lakehouse with Databricks, because Databricks in the space is a huge transformation tool, a huge portal to build your data lakehouses. Now, should I or can I use Fabric? Well, I think you can, or maybe you should, but I think the future will define how it will go on going forwards. So, but imagine that you already have a data lakehouse in Databricks, and it's hosted on AWS S3 buckets or within Azure Data Lake. Then you can use Microsoft Fabric, and I think specifically you want to use a direct lake mode, because then you don't have to build your Power BI dataset anymore, and that's completely possible. I think one thing we didn't mention yet is the V-order algorithm. So that's something that comes by default when you're creating a data lakehouse within Microsoft Fabric. The V-order algorithm is actually something that mimics how Power BI datasets were handling the data to have the optimal performance. This comes by default in Microsoft Fabric. And then I see already some of you thinking, well, what happens when I have built my data lakehouse in ADLS or S3? Well, there's also a possibility, something that we tested, there's also a possibility to create V-orders also on shortcutted data lakes. This will be something that will be released today or tomorrow in an insight. So behind us, we have a nice QR code, which is linking to the insights, the Microsoft Fabric insights, and all other insights that we're hosting at element61. Voila, second question. So what happens to my Power BI datasets if I pass my Fabric capacity?
Yeah, so obviously, if you're pausing your capacity and you're doing some direct lake mode, it will pause the thing and you will not be able to query your reports. So that's an important one. Be aware that it's going to be the same with the import mode. So if you're deploying your dataset imported within the same Fabric workspace as your capacity, obviously, it will also disable that. So that's something very important, that if you want to decouple this, I would recommend that you then create a separate workspace where you're going to publish your import model, because then you can pause your capacity, for example, use for your ETL, and then still keep the import mode available, right? Now, second question, why does direct lake sometimes fall back to direct query? And what are the implications of this? So if the query that you're trying to send towards the Delta file is too big, and currently Microsoft has not really defined what is too big, but if you go in the performance analyzer, you will see at some point that it's swapping over the direct query. At that moment, it's simply because it cannot cache all the result at some point that you're asking, and it cannot send all that information back. And then it will swapping back to a direct query. If it does that, obviously the performance will be worse, and you can expect that. And also, you will have all the limitation that the direct query offers to you. So typically, I believe that time intelligence function do not work very well with a direct query. So be aware of that. If you're asking too much out of the direct lake, you might fall back in a scenario where some of your measures will not work efficiently.
Right. Last question is a question that will be answered by Michiel, I hope. So, do we need to have a new set of skills for using Fabric, Michiel?
Already back again to put the pressure. Already sweating again. No, yeah. So you don't need to have a new set of skills for using Fabric. I think the wonderful thing that the product team did was that they have like different scenarios, that they thought of all the spectrum of all the different developers on how to build a data model. And you have the different toolings available like Spark, like T-SQL, like Data Mart, and these kind of things to create your data model with the skill set that you now have. So yeah, no new set of skills needed.
All right, great. I try to copy paste or get a grip of all the questions that were popped in the Q&A section. So I'm quickly going to de-share my screen again, shared again, because then the Power BI PowerPoint slides will be updated. So, I'm going to reshare. Don't be afraid that you will not see our screen. Voila. So the questions. All right. So the first question, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for me. So the first question is, I think I heard Timothy say he's not a fan of the OneDrive like experience for browsing files. Why not? That was a question from Yves Groenen. Well, that's purely my experience. That's something that I found. I don't see a lot of added value of checking what's in there. Also, dragging and dropping from your Windows environment. I think it might be useful in some cases, but I don't see the biggest added value there. There are much more things that are really powerful features within Microsoft Fabric. This is something which I'm not completely convinced of. All right, next one. When will Fabric be generally available? I think it's also a question that we hear a lot. I think they're pointing for Q4, but nothing has been
Announced
yet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have to wait a little bit. Microsoft there to tell us something. Is this the end of Power BI Desktop then by Alex Carnero? Or, Gary?
Yeah. So in my opinion, there's a clear intention for Microsoft to give you as many features as you have currently in the desktop in the web authoring. It's also a way for them to open towards other platforms. Typically, Mac users were always complaining that desktop was not a tool that was available for them. But definitely there is still a use for it, because currently in terms of feature parity, you have a big difference. And if you're still going to use import mode and things like that, you can definitely still use it. So I would not say it's the end, but I believe that Microsoft is trying to slowly bring them up to par. And depending on what kind of profile you are, you can use one or the other.
So the Mac users will be really
exactly. Yes, super happy.
It's Fabric. All right. To show this demo, are you using Power BI Premium capacity or Fabric capacity?
We are using a Fabric capacity, and I think you know the SKU better than I do.
Yes, if I'm, I think it's an F8, F16. So,
yeah.
And basically, if you want to assign Fabric capacity to your Fabric environment, then you have to provision this capacity in Azure. So there's still some need for Azure experience and know how to work with the portal. So provision it there and assign it to your workspace, right? Next one, but you still need separate Power BI license per logged in user. think again there it depends.
Yeah, depending on if you go for F64 or above, or you have a premium capacity like a P1 or P2, then you can have your free license here. If you have anything below, you still need a pro users to be able to access the reports. So those people still need a license to access the reports, right?
Okay, maybe some questions for Michiel as well. So does Fabric have an API to manage the portal similar to Azure to pause starts? A question from Barton.
Yes, at this moment, no. If you look at the API documents and the documentation, there is only one admin API available where you can manage the tenant settings, but I'm expecting that the REST APIs will be developed and opened as well.
Probably there will be two APIs, one to handle the capacity within Azure and one for managing the configurations in Microsoft Fabric.
Yeah, with the workloads.
I think on the roadmap, there's also an SDK, a software development kit integration.
Indeed, and that's built on top of APIs.
Yeah, but also to be released, I guess. Right. Another one from Brecht de Bruyne. Does Unity still fit in the Fabric security layer?
Yeah,
maybe give a little context of what Unity Catalog is, where it's being positioned.
So Unity Catalog is a security layer, a governance layer on top of a Databricks account. It's on an account level, not on a workspace level, where you can interact with your data on your data lake using general rules that are defined in the Unity Catalog. And what you're expecting at this moment, it's not integrated because it's defined in a Databricks environment. So if we want to have like our code layer as a shortcut, it's on our one lake, we're shortcutting everything to that. So I'm not expecting that the managed identities, but it needs to be tested, I think.
Yeah, maybe from a data governance perspective, if Unity Catalog can interface with Purview, Microsoft Fabric can also interface with Purview, then you might get the complete picture with the Purview.
But I'm going to check it and I will come back on it.
Super. All right, there was also actually an answer from Peter van Hey. So he showed us how we can activate the Microsoft Fabric feature from within the Power BI report. Thumbs up. Louette Stefan, where is the data security management in Fabric? Will those settings enable an enterprise self-service BI? I heard something is coming, but any view on that already now?
So they have the concept of one security.
Yes.
The one security is on the roadmap, but not ready as of now. So that's an important topic because everything that is related to security right now is not covered. So row-level security, object-level security, all of those things are not present in Fabric right now. So be aware that if you're testing and if you're sharing that information with some colleagues, nothing is secured. So in the long run, what they have presented is one security, which is something that we haven't addressed here, and we probably will in the future. But it will allow you to do on the column level some row level security and object level security. So straight from the Delta file, you will be able to secure everything, and then it will fly up until Power BI and above, right? So you will not need to do some security in Power BI desktop anymore or through rows or whatever. You can simply do it straight on the Delta files.
Right. Great. Some other questions. So Bruno Bertels, can you use folders or something else to organize your data, pipelines and notebooks? I think this has something to do with, are you going to organize your structure in Microsoft Fabric?
As of today, no. The only thing that we might recommend is to maybe split the workspace depending on the medallion architecture that we do. That's something that we have tried, and so far this is the best experience that we can have. So having a bronze workspace, a silver workspace, and a gold workspace, but currently there is no way to logically split your information.
Yeah, there will also be an insight about this one, because it goes even further and goes forward to DevOps and source control integrations. So I think there having everything in one and the same workspace is not ideal because you're going to mix Fabric artifacts. But yeah, we will if you check our Fabric insights or landings page, then you will see that in a couple of weeks, months, some things will pop up around the governance of the Microsoft Fabric. Bruno Windels, how relevant is Fabric if you don't use Power BI?
Well, if you do have a lakehouse or plan to have a lakehouse, in my opinion, it's as valid as doing it in Databricks. It's an ETL tool at this point. You can do ingestion, you can do machine learning, you can do data engineering. So it is a centralized view to do all of these components for you. If you don't use Power BI, but you use Tableau or whatever afterward, it's still a valid way of doing your ETL, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, and then the last question, if no other questions will pop up. So Thomas Schijvaerts is asking, are there migration options to move Synapse dedicated pool logic to Fabric? Now it seems that you need to recreate all logic in Synapse Data Warehouse. Same for, and yeah, I don't see the rest of it. But the question is, will there be migration paths?
Yeah. So it was announced during Microsoft Build, but it's not ready yet, that there will be a tool that will allow you to migrate straight from your Synapse towards the equivalent in Fabric, but it's not released yet. But it's definitely on the roadmap for them, and they guaranteed us that it would be able to do a one-one migration for Synapse existing customers. So rejoice, you should not have to copy-paste your code.
Yeah. Two extra questions. We're not finished yet.
See one with data domains, maybe.
Yeah, and there was one above. So is it possible to make subfolders in the workspace and Fabric? I think we covered that one.
Yep.
Now it's not possible, but it's important to think about how you're going to organize all your Fabric artifacts within Fabric.
Yep.
Data domains.
Yeah, data domains. So briefly, currently, as of today, they are not extremely relevant yet, but it's basically a logical layer that you can put on top of your workspaces in Fabric. For example, I have a data domain finance, and under that, I decide that I have 5 workspaces that are related to finance. I can then flag them as related towards that domain. And then if I'm entitled to see only the domain finance, I would see directly those domains. So you have to see it some kind of logical layer, security layer that you can flag things. And later down the roadmap, they also said that you could flag files. So that's also convenient, like because you could flag everything finance related, and you could see everything related to that domain. Mm-hmm. I'm going to jump straight into the data flow and data mart question, maybe.
Yeah, I wanted to give you
go ahead.
Things. So I think also data domains fits perfectly in the data mesh movement, which is ongoing, and it's actually also an answer there.
Yeah.
Data flow and data marts.
Yeah, data flow and
Power BI features.
So they are obviously available in the workspace, so you can still use them if you want to, and you don't even need a Fabric license to use them. So a Pro license will still be okay for those, so you can still use them. But obviously, if you don't have a Fabric capacity, they're also available. You just have to put yourself in the Power BI persona, and you will see them available there.
Top. I think we're through all our questions. Okay, let's then conclude with our final slides. So it's our conclusion that I think the vision of Microsoft is really bright, and they showed it by adopting direct lake data lakehouses, but also adapting their mature and performance query engines. Direct lake mode is a killer feature, I think, because I think real-time analytics also be pushed now into Power BI. It will shorten your data warehouse loads, and there's less data friction. Be aware, because Microsoft Fabric is still in public preview, so there are a lot of nice features that are coming. We also experience, I think we're now being completely honest, we also experience some bugs, but Microsoft and the PMs, the program managers, are really on top of those bugs, and some of those bugs were already addressed, or they made clear that they were going to work on it. the roadmap of Microsoft's Fabric is looking really impressive. So there are a lot of new things that will be released, like for example the real-time analytics. I think yesterday they also released data activators,
correct.
so to do some actionable insights on what's already there in Power BI. And I would advise you to also start exploring the features yourself. It's a really nifty and new tool, or reach out to us and we can of course help you. That's it. So maybe as a last thing to mention, so in a couple of weeks we will release a lot of Microsoft's Fabric insights. So be sure to stay tuned. That's basically it. All right. Thanks for joining the session, and
Thank you.
bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.